Okay, welcome everybody to Star Trek, our intrepid there it is, our intrepid journey through all things Star Trek, and we have stopped on our destination at the Naked Time from the original series first season. An infection boards the Enterprise and causes everyone to go a bit doolally, but in the end, they travel back in time. That's the moral of that story anyway. Gentlemen, how are we this evening? This was directed by Mark Daniels.
What's the point in asking me how I'm doing if you're just going to roll right into the fun facts?
Did you say Mark Daniels, director Mark Daniels, visited George Takei in his trailer and asked him to take off his shirt? After observing his bare chest, Daniels announced that they would do the fencing scene shirtless. Unknown to him and the rest of the cast and crew, George Takei spent all his free time in the next 3 days doing push-ups.
I don't know if it was going to be unknown, or he suddenly what comes in swole one day, and it's just like, are you okay?
I don't think you get jacked in 3 days.
Mark Daniels also directed some, since I'm also an IMDb auto, some of the most noteworthy episodes of the series. Space Seed, The Man Trap, of course, for better or for worse, Doomsday Machine, Mirror, and of course, Spock's Brain.
Actually, I thought the direction was pretty good. The scene with Spock's emotions, they swing the camera around and getting close. You know, the scene where Chapel admits her love for him, and they do some close-ups there. They did some good stuff with the.
It's a good emotional intensity. Yeah,
setting up shots.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This was also written by John D. F. Black. Also, do you want to tell us what else he wrote for Star Trek?
Oh yeah, he wrote Naked Time, Naked Now, and Justice.
Oh boy!
So the three most naked episodes of Star Trek he was in on.
And we have now covered them all.
Cops.
We never have to review after this. We never have to review another John D.F. Black episode. We've finally
until he writes for Strange New World season 3.
Dude, Naked Now is actually a really fun romp. I think Shai was with us on that one, and we all enjoyed it to some extent.
That's right.
It was so good.
I like this original version. I like the remake version.
It literally is.
We get a Strange New Worlds version of this.
Oh God.
Shirtless Anson Mount with some kind of weapon in his hand, yeah.
You're not exactly unselling me this. I'm kind of thinking maybe.
I'm on board for it.
No, but Benga just goes around just beating the shit out of people. That's all he does. He goes mad and just kicks the shit out of everyone.
I mean, that storybook episode was basically Naked Now and Naked Time.
A little bit, but I don't know. Could have been done with being a bit more horny.
Well, give it time. They'll get that Gene Roddenberry in there somehow. So
give it Naked Time?
It might be a bit of a Naked Time. So guys, tell me what you thought about this episode overall. There was kind of a lot going on with this. Dan and Frank, tell us what you thought. How you felt about it. Dan Frank, not Anne Frank. Dan Frank. That's your combined name.
Dan Frank.
I couldn't.
The Diary of Dan Frank.
You go first.
Yeah.
Well, I was pretty amazed at how Star Trek-y this was, and I've criticized some of our past episodes here for really being Monster of the Week or really just kind of taking a premise and stretching it way too thin. But I was really happy that everybody on the Enterprise had a role to play. They all worked together. The captain actually did a job of bringing the team together, making sure everybody was on task. It felt good, and the icing on the cake was that everybody got a little bit of exposition to their character, and so now we have a little bit of depth. We were talking about the direction just a moment ago. I'm really glad that they took the time on these scenes where we needed a little bit more, and it didn't feel like padding. Spock alone in the rec room and feeling his feelings, and with also in the previous scene with Spock and Chapel, just taking a moment and a beat to really explore something interesting. There was room to breathe. I think the only time we really felt that there was any padding to this episode was when they went back in time in the last moment. Not really sure exactly what that was about.
Yeah, we need 5 minutes. Go.
Yeah, but man, this felt familiar. It felt right. Man, no notes.
We have the benefit of hindsight, watching classic Trek, watching Twilight Zone, and taking off our modern production brains for a second, because it's hard to compare something that's been made like Disco season whatever that we're watching right now versus this, because it really is almost incomparable. But to your point, and TOS has a bit of a stigma for people that maybe really didn't watch it, that it is, lack of a better term, hard to watch. It's very stiff, and there's a lot of just camera shots of emoting, of William Shatner looking at someone and kind of grinning, and Spock just standing there. This episode had a lot of silent emoting. It had a lot of African rain stick, which I appreciated. And it had a lot of little character moments, little things where you find out something about various people. And to your point, everybody gets to do something, including McCoy, kill a man, show he's inept as a doctor. And that's really appreciated, that no one's a worthless background character. And it's a long, TOS long episodes. These are like 50 minutes long compared to your normal current production of 42 minutes. So there's a little bit more time to fill. And I agree, it was good right there into the end when it was just suddenly, hey, now we're all vaccinated, we're all good. Oh, and let's go back in time. 3 days. Thanks. We just went super fast. And it's like, well, that... and they just kind of give a wink to it. They're like, yeah, we can go to any planet any time. We're good. They're like, yeah, maybe another day.
Come back when we need some whales.
Yeah, that bit at the end did kind of feel like a bit of a fill for time. I need to hit my word count scene, because guess what I've had to do those in my time. And I feel like it was a bit of a lost opportunity, because I feel like there should have been a bit of a thematic tie back to, if the entire point of the episode is, like the emergence of latent personality traits, of like, the feelings that you truly feel, I feel like there should at least been some kind of like coda from like Kirk or Spock about, using the extra days in our lives to, be a little bit more ourselves or something like that, using the time that you have wisely. But it just didn't come back at all. It was just, well, 3 days back in time. Anyway, what's for dinner?
Yeah, literally. Chai, Auto. The other power couple.
I mean, I think this episode is aged really well, actually. I'll give it for the time pass on any of the sort of regressive elements in the story. And we talked about it a little bit during the watch through, but the fact that they went with a fencing foil instead of a katana it's low key super important in not making Sulu sort a stereotype or just
coming out wearing a racial stereotype with a samurai sword or
something.
Yeah,
he's just a guy in the future who has interests in the Three Musketeers. He likes that sort of swashbuckling era of 18th century France, and yeah, that's just how he exercises.
Well, fun fact, John D.F. Black came up with Sulu's berserk scenes without specifying the weapon to be used. Unable to decide between a samurai sword or a fencing foil, he left the choice to George Takei. Takei picked the latter. He reasoned that by the 23rd century, humans would have developed to a point where they would choose their cultural artifacts based on personal preference rather than ethnic background, and he had great fun acting in the episode and took his fencing very seriously, practicing his technique on the set and working out to, like we said earlier, working out to define his chest muscles. He definitely, you can kind of tell like he put his all into that, because he just looks like he's having a great time. He's probably having the most fun he ever has on this series.
And
remind me. Here you go,
Frank.
Here you go, Frank.
I was gonna say just the beautiful emoting when he touched the tip of the rapier and he ow.
Yeah.
And Kirk did the same thing, just that little facial acting. It's like, yay.
It was a great callback, actually. The tip of the sword.
Yeah, remind me, I feel like I've read this story. Was he not lying when he said he had fencing experience when he was offered that choice? He was like, it makes way more sense for me to do that because I've got experience. And then it's like, oh, well, now I've got to go and get like fencing lessons in the days before. I feel like I remember hearing that story. Now the fact you haven't brought it up means I've now doubted its veracity, but... He handled it well, even if it was slightly bent and skew-if.
He did. Go on, Otto.
Yeah, pre-rated 2.3. This definitely blew that out of the water. There's really only one moment that actually is, and it's going to end up being my worst moment. But Riley's doing the Wesley down in engineering. He's and he's drunk and use restraint in putting on your makeup, women. Women should not be made to look up or should not look made up. And he's like going off on this thing where I'll tie that in a moment. But there's no way that wasn't Roddenberry writing this. There were a few lines where it's like, all right, that's the part that Roddenberry rewrote. But outside of that, yeah, we mentioned it. The character, everybody got something character arc wise. It's the most screen time for Sulu. When I hammer Discovery for the Burnham show, this is what I would like my ensemble stuff to look like, because we got tons of the big three and Scotty doing his thing in engineering, but a lot of other characters got something. This is the only episode of the 79 they did the original series where all three of the main cast of females got something. The only episode where all three were on, so that was nice to see. And even the storylines that intertwined, like Chapel and Spock, and then Spock and Kirk a little bit, was nice. So, and then I think we'll get to later stars, but what we liked there at the end with Kirk's storyline of if he doesn't have a ship, what does he have? Because he gave up everything else for it, and so that is a nice angle with women and relationships that isn't like totally of its era. It's still relatable to this day, and every captain to some extent has to deal with that, so that's a nice thing. But I want to tie in a little bit and then ask you guys kind of a big picture question. Author John D.F. Black was outraged when he discovered that Roddenberry rewrote his script without consulting him or even telling him about it. That's point number one. Point number two, we talked about the director visiting George in his trailer, asking him to take off his shirt. Point three, according to Nimoy's autobiography, the scene where Spock breaks down in tears was originally supposed to be a simple sight gag with a crewman painting a mustache on Spock. Nimoy wanted a deeper scene for it and one that preserved his dignity. He talked to the writer John D.F. Black about it. Black was already working on the next script and blew him off, so Nimoy went to Gene Roddenberry. Roddenberry agreed with Nimoy, yada yada. So we've got directors like propositioning guys in their trailers. We've got writers going off doing different stuff on scripts. We have the creator rewriting the writer's notes without talking to them. It's like the Wild West out there. And I have to think, in some of these reviews we've done, TNG season 1 was also, they have some real train wreck episodes. So let me ask you guys, what does Star Trek look like if we don't get Burnham and Braga and Bear? If we just had Roddenberry for 5-7 seasons of TNG, do we get spin-offs? Does Star Trek endure to the point that it has today, or what does that look like?
How you I like how you say, no, does it get 5 seasons? No, it does not. It gets to season 2 and then it cancels. It's straight up, like, especially in season 2, because you have to remember season 2 is them prying Roddenberry off of the helm. They're just like they're grabbing him by the leg and yanking him away. And then season 3 is completely away. If you have a season 2 that is more like season 1, guess what? That show does not survive. It does not. No way.
You're talking about TNG.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Star Trek as a whole, like moving forward, how do things look under Roddenberry? Because TNG came back after fan support, but I mean, did it succeed in spite of Roddenberry, or
yes,
how much?
It definitely did.
Well, yes. Roddenberry made some good decisions, right? You even in that anecdote you told. Yeah. That was the right decision to rewrite that scene with Nimoy and Roddenberry just rewriting that scene. It was painting a mustache on him. Maybe it was hilarious in the script on the page, but it sounds stupid.
Yeah, definitely since doing our Twilight Zone reviews and comparing Roddenberry to Rod Serling, we have definitely gone down in our estimates of Roddenberry. But he definitely still did a lot of good stuff. But yeah, he definitely didn't know when to control certain urges, and especially with writing and expressing.
Well, it's also a case of like. You make the point of fan demand is what made TNG come back. That was arguably not because of Roddenberry. That's because of the movies. That's because of Nicholas Meyer and various other creators who have a arguably bigger stake in defining what TNG ended up looking like and what people liked it for.
There's a lesson in having a single creator's hand in something. Well, let's take a look at why I like this episode so much, because the ensemble cast all had a chance to bring some input and create a solution to a product. And so we talk about the successes and failures of Berman and Braga and Bear and a lot of the, we'll say, pre-modern Star Trek directors and producers, and I feel like without them all having their own interest and direction to it, we wouldn't have such a varied and successful number of different Trek entries in the franchise. We, and so not everybody could be Rod Serling, right? So let's take a look at, so an interesting way to look at it is Babylon 5. So J. Michael Straczynski is a masterful writer, and him being at the helm as a showrunner really produced some fantastic science fiction, but it wasn't massively popular. Didn't survive past that 5th season. And while it still lives on in a lot of fan fiction, it's not the kind of thing that was digestible by the masses to really carry it to a full 7-season show, like we got with the pre-modern Star Treks. So I feel like, it does need more than Roddenberry, and I think maybe Twilight Zone, as creative as Serling was, maybe it did need more than him, and he did draw from a bunch of different wells to make sure that some of the stories were representing different tropes, so that there was a little bit of a depth to it. Star Trek needs as many voices as possible behind it to make sure that we have something for all of us.
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Yeah, look, it takes thousands of people to make TV and movies. Star Wars is nothing without John Williams, and these mavericks of genre, the George Lucases, the Gene Roddenberrys, they're good until they're not, right? I know millennials look fondly back on those prequels, but we in this group understand what the prequels were, and you're good until you're not, and then that's when you get you're torn away from the wheel of the ship and locked in your quarters, and you let someone else handle it.
I'll thank you not to besmirch the good name of Jar Jar, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, no, far be it from me to besmirch the name of our good Sith Lord.
Anyway, wrestling us back on topic. Sorry, go on.
We're doing these reviews kind of really spread out. So can someone remind me, is this the first time we get a good look at the trope of the captain's married to his ship kind of thing?
So.
I feel like we do, yeah.
Okay. Because I'm trying to think, this episode does a lot for all these characters. On the special Leonard Nimoy Star Trek Memories, Nimoy mentions that after the airing of this episode, his fan mail jumped from dozens of pieces per week to thousands. And, he took off from there. This is the quintessential Sulu episode. Everyone thinks of this episode when they think of Sulu, because this is the most it gets to do. We have the Kirk look into his marriage with the ship. This is probably the best Chapel episode, and their dynamic there. So it's like this episode.
The Roger Corby one, yeah.
Yeah, think
she's not really an active part of that, but yeah.
You think of these moments within the episode as being kind of key for all these characters. Less so, I think that it's kind of the sum of its parts sort of thing with this episode. So.
Well, it's also a case of the part of the problem is that you see all this established, and then a lot of it doesn't kind of really go anywhere. Knowing what we do going forwards, well, yeah, it doesn't really go anywhere, unfortunately. Obviously the Spock stuff does, but if you think about the Chapel flirtation with Spock, that got picked up by Tracy Wells 60 years later.
No, we saw that again in Amok Time when Chapel's trying to care for him and making him filmic broth soup. There's a reason why Strange New Worlds picked up on this. It's because it kind of ran through the original series, to my recollection.
But it's also a case of what does Uhura get to do in this? She gets to be professional, and she gets a soft moment with Kirk.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, they had a little tender moment. It's weird how much they jam-packed in this episode for moments. There's a moment between Kirk and Uhura. There's a moment between Chapel and Spock, and there's moments between Kirk and Scotty gets to be professional. This is, like you say before, Otto, this is a great ensemble cast bit, and then
Yeah. I just kind of wish more episodes were like this. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, both Uhura and Rand get to take the helm. And also Rand's brother, apparently, also gets to take it.
That was weird.
Crewman Rand, yeah. I also think they had the perfect amount of zany, because when Riley takes control, he pulls the Wesley, and it starts to wiggle off track a little bit, but then they pull it back in, and they're back in on the threat and the planet and the polywater and everything. So I feel like the pace, I did mention the pacing we were watching just because we've been watching a lot of 22-minute stuff. But outside of that, it was good. They threw in a little zany, we had some chuckles, but then they pulled it back into a serious threat, and they wove in all the emotional storylines pretty well.
Yeah, I do actually have to give this episode some props for restraint, which is not something you can usually say for TOS, because especially if you compare it with the Naked Now, like Naked Now is just a farce.
That was off the rails, in a good way.
It's off the rails from moment one. Like if you just compare the openings, like the opening for Naked Now is Picard's opening log narration, and then you've got like fucking 80s like your radio host like giving like a sexual monologue before they all get blown out, and it's such a whiplash. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. Your favorite joke of all the ones you've got.
It's on topic this time.
It actually is, I'll give you that. But like we were watching this and I was stunned by how seriously it took it. And then that just means that all the moments of sudden emotional outburst, they feel like that they're a bit of a liberation, but there's also a bit of a threat to them because they so feel out of place. You're like, okay, what the fuck? It's like when you run into a random drunk guy on the street. You're like, okay, cool. I'm glad you're emotionally liberated, bro, but I'm kind of doing my own thing here. And it's a little bit of a threat, but like held back by the fact that only one person dies in this entire episode, so it's not like
only one.
It's only one. Record. And guess what? That guy, he earned it. Fucking earned it.
Does he come back to life?
No.
Does he come back to life?
Go back 3 days earlier, right? Is he alive?
Yeah, but
he's still dead.
He's still dead.
Yeah, he's still dead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They get to sit 3 days in the past and let them die.
Okay.
They let him die the second time.
He deserves it, frankly. Like bad hygiene protocols. But like I just appreciate how restrained it was. It's like it doesn't go from seriously treated science fiction piece to wacky zany farce. It lets it build, and then it spikes, and then it lets it build, and it spikes. And it's like you get more and more of it as it goes forward rather. But like it doesn't feel like it descends into parody, which would be very easy to do, and which I think Naked Now does. I feel it does descend into
which
parody.
Essentially it is. It is a parody of this episode. It's literally.
But it treats it way too seriously.
If you cut a lot of the fat, and it's not that there was a lot of fat here, but if you cut a lot of the fat and cut this episode down to 22 minutes, this could be a Twilight Zone episode of poor hygiene of an away team in the beginning that gets this mysterious illness that passes it to everybody. Everybody starts going crazy, and then suddenly at the end they go back in time 3 days, and they're all sitting there going, "Oh, what do we do? Do we do it again, or do we do something else?"
It's on Maple Street, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Sterling. What we got next week?
To pick up on the thread, I liked the Strange New Worlds tie-in. It makes you do the Leo DiCaprio point at the screen meme, like, oh, that's what they're pulling from. It's really good. There's this line Spock has where he says, I can never tell my mother that I loved her. And I think about that episode Charades in Strange New Worlds where he finally sees her point of view on things that he had never appreciated growing up. And in that episode, he doesn't tell her he loves her, but he gets as close as that Spock can and say, I never appreciated what you had to go through before. And so this now, however many years later, is probably him looking back to that moment in Stranger Worlds and thinking, I wish I'd told her a little bit more. And so these tie-ins really help you appreciate the older material, which really speaks to the writer's strength in Strange New Worlds.
Okay, gentlemen, it is time to go on to our best and worst moments. See, I'm so used to doing the Twilight episode and having a trigger for that. I need to get audio triggers. Like, I'm not used to such an unsatisfactory rating among our crew. Best and worst moments.
Much too low rating.
Yeah, no. Or you could even say your bread of the episode. Frank, what were your best and worst moments of this episode?
Well, there's so many of us. I don't want to step on any toes.
I think we will have duplicates. I'll allow duplicates.
Yeah. I'm gonna say both, and this is the same answer. The best because it was so irreverently funny and out of place, and the worst because it was so irreverently funny and out of place is the very opening where you have an away team member, a science member, going down to a station where there are 6 dead bodies from mysterious circumstances, and he's wearing his beekeeper uniform, and he says, you know what, screw it, I'll just take off my glove, I'll just give the finger a sniff here, I'll just go rubbing on this desk, I'll just go doing that. how do you have an IQ greater than 3 stationed on the Starship Enterprise under the direction of Spock, being in the science department, and do that dumb stuff? Like, it makes that was just, I hope somebody got fired for that blunder. But then at the same time, it was also funny because I'm spending the entire episode going,
can we just say how Spock is like the most unobservant person in this episode? Like, he has that happen under his watch. He's then on the bridge while Riley just disappears, and he doesn't notice until about 2 scenes later.
Yeah, and then Rand's getting hit on in the hallway. It's like, don't do that, and immediately walks away, and she gets hit on again. It's like, you didn't do anything, Spock.
Dan.
Yeah, my worst moment was also going to be Ensign Smell My Finger. Good thing he died. He never would have lived that down with his crewmates. But my best moment was the very rare moment that we got between Sulu and her response, "Sorry, neither." Just so fantastic when he calls her a fair maiden. Just love seeing the two of them really just show how great they are with each other, just even for a brief moment.
Oh yeah, you have the worst one there. Auto.
All right, I got 2 best because since we're allowed to repeat.
Greedy.
Yeah. The first one's it's right at the beginning. That opening shot was fantastic. The guy's splayed out on the table. Everything's covered in spackled in white, and it's visually it's very. It grabs you. You're like, oh, what's going on here? You want to know more.
You're half expecting the camera to turn over, and then there's Rosselli.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit.
And the snow's coming down, and there's Martians, and
so
that that's a simple one. But actually, the one that I think about is then with Chapel and Spock when he visits the sick bay. I don't think to that point he had been infected yet, and so it did come on quickly in him. But his response to her there was Spock. It was not Polywater Spock. It was Spock. So when she says "I love you," and he just freezes in his tracks, and Spock is a very decisive, logical character. He doesn't pause when he speaks. He doesn't speak slowly, and so his response to that was like, "Wow, this is like how a human would like dramatically react to something." So to see Spock do that was like a big shock, and you could tell that it affected him a lot emotionally, and so. Yeah, I do wish they picked up a little more on that throughout the series, and they did do some, and they are doing more. But that was really, it was great for both of them. And Majel's fantastic. Everything she does in Star Trek is great. So I really love that scene. Worst moment is women should not look made up and use restraint. Put on your makeup. There are moments where if you do like an awkward drunk thing and someone says something that makes you look at them different, that could possibly be good television. If you do it to like build a character or something, but this just felt like Roddenberry was writing shitty script, so that's my worst moment.
I'm gonna cut in here. I'm gonna say my best moment was the fact that this was also had that little science tinge to it. We had the planet that was falling, collapsing in on itself because it was a dead star system and could have been Earth-like, and there was quite a bit of time spent about how they're falling into this planet. They could have just said, there's something blowing up, we need to go. But they actually spent a lot of time between Spock and Kirk talking about that, and I really liked that. My worst moment is also Finnegan, Riley, whatever his name is, unassociated Irishman number 317, who just sort of kind of went from like being a Boston accent. He's like, "Yo, Sulu, what are we doing?" And just like, "Oh, he hate that, oh, he," and all of a sudden, sort of like reaping the potatoes of his accent, and then sort of wandering off, all like on a flip of a switch, was just like, okay, no, thank you, I don't like this. This is not very good at all. Shy.
I think I'm with you a little bit on the worst moment. Riley did not. Maybe if he had a different song.
Oh yeah.
Throughout the episode, just say
he's only got
Kathleen.
one.
Yeah.
It was a tie between him and the smell my finger crewman down on the planet. I was reminded of the Aliens prequel Prometheus. Where the scientist goes into the cave and just basically tries to smell one of the xenomorph eggs. I'm like, oh, that's bad science going on right there. And it was pretty much the same. Plus, he kind of really wanted to be like teen idol James Dean acting going on. It's like, what's going on, Captain? Why you're tearing me apart? It was sort of that. And the best moment for me is it's got to be Sulu fencing. That's such an iconic image.
There it is.
It's That's what it is for me.
Wait, so Shy, if we got a Riley Patter song, would that pull it back for you? Would that be good?
Oh yeah. If it had been a musical virus that just gave him a good Patter song, definitely.
All right, stars.
I'm actually really, really happy that no one picked on either of my best or worst, because I was worried with all of us here. Nice. So they're kind of intertwined because they kind of follow on from each other. So the worst moment is the worst because it comes so very close to being the best, and it's Kirk's bit in the briefing room, where he's going on about like the ship and his relationship with it and how much it takes, and I'm listening to the words, I'm watching him emote, and I'm like, this is so close to doing it for me. This is so close to doing it for me, but the director is not pulling him back just quick enough. And it's intertwined with my best moment, because my best moment is that little quiet moment on the bridge where he looks at Rand and he says, "No beach to walk on." And in that moment, like, this is what, like 1967? This is 1967 this came out? Yeah, I can see 1982 Wrath of Khan Kirk in there, which is my absolute favorite performance that Shatner's ever given. Just such an emotional, mature, considered character. Just so... There's that weariness in him there. And it's so well done, that one line, that there's so much restraint in there. And I see that, and I'm like, man, if you could have just toned it back a little bit, if the director had been able to just pull you back a little bit. Because I feel like Shatner's a terrific actor. He just needs a director to every so slightly pull him back. And I feel like that lot... So the worst scene is not actually the worst. It's nearly the best scene, and it's the fact that it could have been the best that makes it the worst, if you understand.
So you mean the director that walked into George's trailer and told him to take his shirt off has a problem with subtlety, is what you're telling me?
Yes, oddly enough. Like, it's because I just love that moment. That, like, the amount of restraint and the quiet melancholy. I'm a sucker for quiet melancholy in characters. I am a sucker for moments of self-reflection. It's just a trope that gets to me. Is that kind of emotional tone?
Yeah. You know what that moment is in Wrath of Khan? It's when they're watching the Genesis video and Spock goes, "Dr. Carol Marcus," and Shatner just goes, "Yes." Yeah. It's like the same thing, like the light that could have been, the beach that could have been walked on.
And it's such a good Kirk moment, because it's like you don't often see him in TOE. Well, you do see it fairly often, but like, I don't know, it's underneath all the Shatner bluster and the ego. There is a really, really good character. Like, what was it Jimmy Doohan said? It's like, I really like Captain Kirk, but I can't stand Bill Shatner. And it's like the character as written is really, really tragic and emotive, and has all this, like, these Byronic qualities. And it's just like, every now and then you get to see the glimpse of what could have been if there had been just a bit more restraint. And like, that's kind of where this sits for me, is in between that.
Here's a question.
This is all okay, because the bigness of Shatner's Kirk is indelible to the franchise, and it helped make it what it is. A. B, it makes those quiet moments better.
Yeah.
And C, you've seen Shatner elsewhere. You know his range. You know he's a great actor. So it's like, that's okay with me, because those if you get those great little quiet moments all the time, well, then you don't have Shatner's Kirk. You have a different character. So it's
you're not wrong. It's just
you got to
like,
leave him wanting more. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things. Like, for me, I personally just like, I see that moment, and it's like, that is my red of this episode. That's going to stick with me, like, genuinely.
Do you think?
Yeah, look, if you
sorry, go on, Chai.
I was going to say, if you find yourself binging through TOS at some point, what you'll realize is that Shatner's Kirk has those quiet moments a lot more than, like, the public remembers, because all they remember is the bombast and flamboyance. Yeah.
Quick question: If Carol Marcus had been replaced with Janice Rand, because he's obviously got a lot of longing memories. If she'd have suddenly left the ship, and then you find out, she's been gone to Regular One, and they've had a son together because of the beach not walked on, would that have made that a little bit more impactful, or would that have been added any extra dynamic?
Wait, what if this were got together while she was on the ship and then left, or what?
Yeah, and then left. They had their son, or maybe the timeline doesn't quite work out, or something like that. And actually, David Marcus was their son, or David Rand, for example. Little what if for you.
Well, I think we've kind of decided before that we don't like seeing our captains with relationships with their subordinates, because it really muddies things. So I don't know about that.
All right. Well, since I've killed the conversation, let's go on.
But first officers, or heads of security, go for it. But not the
right.
So here's the thing: Idle bearing his heart and revealing himself to be the closet romantic we all know he is, and we're all just like, yeah, whatever, Idle. Sit on it.
Yeah.
Let's go to
Idle's
our
alt fan fiction.
Let's go to our rating criteria. Please, Stars, hit me with your.
You could use the.
Oh, I could.
For this
we
one,
could.
right?
We could. Hang on. Where is it? Hang on. It's here.
We're upgrading.
Oh, I don't know if this will work on this scene. Actually, hang on. It might look terrible. Let's put it in anyway. God. Let's have a go.
I can show you my rating code.
Sugar rating 3.5. Associational rating norm -3.
That's much too low a rating.
It's much too low a rating.
Seeing an unsatisfactory rating on a member of my crew.
There we go. I did it. So, please, Stars, please hit us with a rating criteria.
So I had one that I was pretty happy with, but then I saw another one. I was like, okay, no, I got to replace it. So my original rating was how many standard issue Starfleet medical welding torches out of 10. But my refined one is, gentlemen, how many Riley crotch grabs out of 10 would you like to give this episode? Because that bit when he comes out of the elevator, out of the turbo lift, and he's just like feeling himself. How many Riley crotch grabs out of 10?
Sounds like the dance move. Well, since you started us, Stars, go ahead. How many Riley crotch grabs are you giving this?
So I pre-rated this an 8. I'm happy with that. I feel like this is absolutely... I'm going to bump it to an 8.5 Riley crotch grabs out of 10. This is a really solid episode. Like, the only bit that really kind of falls and doesn't have any emotional resonance is the end, because they don't bother to tie it into the rest of the episode. But every other scene, I'm like, I can see the point of this scene. Like, there is an emotive point here. You're doing good character work. It's not technobabble just for the sake of technobabble. There's like an actual well-established ticking clock. And it's so much better done than in Naked Now, because in Naked Now, it feels like they have forever to fucking solve the problem. And it's just the fact that, like, they're just doing our fucking isolating their chits. But here, it's like, no, we're fucking spiraling. We've got a problem. And it's set up really early, and they're doing their due diligence to avoid it. It feels so much less relaxed. It's a tight ship. And just like, yeah, really good character work. 8.5. 8.5 Riley crotch grabs for me.
Dan.
This was fun. I just had fun watching this, and I'm sure a portion of it is just because I'm familiar with the characters, and so it's great seeing them be the way that I remember them to be. I wonder, though, if watching this in the first time, if I wouldn't have been bored, if I didn't have all the love for Uhuru and Sulu and the rest of the crew that I do today. I kind of had a twinge of that. I haven't been a consistent watcher of Discovery. I'm sure for fans who have watched all 4 previous seasons, watching the first episode and seeing all what I'm certain is very satisfying character progression really meant a lot to them. And it just wasn't very meaningful for me, having skipped so much of Discovery. And so I can see why we didn't get more of this in the original series. I can see why it just defaulted to, the cool robots and ship battles and tension. And, that's what was popular. And this is just a rare moment. And I stand on my rating of 8.5.
Very nice. Shy.
In the pre-rating, I went with an 8. And this I'm very tempted to go to 9, but I just feel like Riley and the bad science lieutenant, just fall a little short for me in terms of, because there's no real villain, right? So everyone has to be really strong in the cast. They're working against a science problem. I will leave it at an
8.5, Shy. We have decimals.
No, I refuse. No, you're decimal. Nonsense.
Look, now, hey, I broke the rating scale, so you could dip into decimals at some point.
No, I refuse. I'm going to leave it at 8 because there's no reason why Riley can't be Scotty or someone else. He dilutes the pool.
I don't want someone I like saying the things that Riley said in this episode.
That is true. That's why he's there.
Yeah,
I understand.
Wolf in the fold for that.
I'm maybe during after hours trading I'll up it to a 9, but for right now I'll leave it at an 8.
Okay. That's true. I was just looking over the ratings. You have never given a decimal point. Everyone else has caved. You never have. Well done. I will go with. I thoroughly enjoyed this. This is a great episode. This is an episode I would show to people that aren't Star Trek fans and kind of go like, yeah, it's goofy, but look how much fun we're having. Like, everyone's got a serious point. There's emotional moments. There's sciencey moments. There's threat. It's paced well. It's shot well. It's just really good. You get a little bit out of every character. You understand what makes Spock a Vulcan. You understand what makes Kirk a captain. You understand what makes McCoy the Doctor. Like, it kind of gives you the brief to say, like, if I was to watch my very first Star Trek episode and get an overall view of who all the characters are, bam, there you go. They get infected with the disease and they show you all the worst inhibitions. Like, I feel like this is a good starter one. So yeah, the Riley stuff's not great. It is grating, annoying. Not as grating and annoying as Wesley was in The Naked Now, but it's still fairly annoying. But I'm gonna push the boat and I'm gonna say 9. I thoroughly enjoyed this. This is probably one of my favorite TOS episodes. There's not a lot I can say about it that is a negative, and those are unsubstantiated related to the plot. So, there we are. Let's go with Auto.
I think I gave Naked Now like at 7 point something, but I think they should probably be rated the same. It's actually interesting because the plot is almost identical, but they have very different takes on it tonally. It's a comical farce, but in a good way. And this one is just, I was expecting something like that, and it definitely wasn't. But I have two thoughts that I kind of take away from this. One is, this is what I want TOS and Discovery to always be like, just in general structure. And my other thought is, I probably won't remember most of this plot. And next time I watch it, I'll be like, oh, this is better than I remembered. Because it's not really that memorable. The B plot was a total joke. Every 5 minutes we see the planet spinning faster, but that doesn't really add anything to the plot. Like, oh, we're almost going to die. And then 5 minutes later, oh, we're almost dead. But that didn't really help the urgency, I don't think. So it's a strong episode, but I think sadly it's kind of forgettable outside of maybe certain small moments that help define the characters. So I'll go 8.2. I'm sorry, what was the criteria? Riley Crotch Grabs out of 10. 8.2. It's a strong episode, but I think it is sadly a little bit forgettable.
Finish us off, Frank.
It's going to be a 3, and I'm going to tell you why. All right. No.
Is this going to be your typical Frank? It's a 3, and that's why I'm giving it an 8.
Yes. Actually, I need to change up my game. So I pre-rated it a 6.9, and everybody said it so eloquently. I do have to give it a decimal. I'm not going to go 9. I'm not going to go 7. For TOS, it's good. For early TOS, it's really good. They're very minimal on the racist humor, slight minimal on the sexism, a couple of worthless things in there, crazy subplots. I'll go 8.11.
8 point what? I believe this is the first double decimal that we've had. 8.11. Well,
oh, don't worry. I'm sure there'll be a TNG episode I can give a 3.14, whatever the reply is.
Absolutely. Well, this has averaged out between us at 8.4. Definitely a top-rated TOS episode between us all. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. If you're watching us live, stick about. We'll be carrying on. And if you're watching us on YouTube, in 2 weeks we'll be reviewing TNG's The Battle. Auto, Dan, Frank, Shy, Stars, thanks for joining us in this fully stacked cast for reviews. We'll see you guys soon. Live long and proper. And live logs and prosper. The other way around. Anyway, bye-bye. Ta-ra.